One day.
All right, good evening, everybody. I could have your attention, we'll get this community meeting started. My name is Eric Peterson, I'm the open space specialist here for Alamos County. Thank you all for spending your evening listening to us. I know time is valuable, so we really appreciate that. We have Groundwork Studio here to give a presentation on the Bayo Canyon redevelopment project, and we've got Felipe here and Luis that will be talking about the poster board you see up here and what we have planned and gathering information from you all on this project. Well, thank you all.
Well, my name's Louise Janney. I'm a landscape architect, the principal landscape architect with Groundwork Studio. And we are here to listen to you on this project. So we're going to introduce the project and go through the information that we've gathered so far. Just as a kind of a start out on how this process works, for us, we begin with visioning, and that includes the listening part. So what we try to do is present to you what is the existing conditions, what are some of the opportunities and constraints, and get your feedback. From that point, we go into conceptual design. We come before you again with options on how to proceed with the desired wish list and a program that's going to work. Just so you know, we don't have topography on this site yet. So we have a little bit of limitations on knowing some of the existing conditions. From that process, we go to developing that selected plan. Again, we return with renderings of the plan. We have more information about costs and some of the details and development renderings on what everything's going to look like. From there on, we go to construction drawings, estimating, and proceed to get your project ready to be bid. So that's just a little about how our process works. And I'm going to hand things over to Felipe to explain.
Thank you. Everybody, Felipe, landscape designer, Groundwork Studio. Next slide, please. So I see some familiar faces, so this will be a little bit of a repeat for anyone who was here in the previous session. Later in the presentation, we'll have some new material for folks who were here last time, but for the folks that weren't here the first meeting, we started by doing a site analysis. So the image on the left-hand side is just zoomed out Los Alamos, looking at just letter A. It's kind of hard to see from back there, but the orange dot is our site. It's the Bayo Canyon trailhead. Number 3 is the North Mesa area, which relates to the image on the right-hand side. So it's kind of just situating us in relation to like North Mesa picnic grounds, Loma Linda Park, the golf course, stables on the far right, and then the elementary school. And in yellow are the some of the trail systems that connect to Bayo Canyon Trail. Next slide. As part of our site analysis on our first visit, we just went and took some site photos. So this is a map. Each number is corresponding with a photo of like where we took it on the map there. And all this material is available online, so if you want to take a closer look at it or look at it later, the boards are up here as well. One thing we noticed in this initial site visit, this was on like a Wednesday afternoon at like 1 o'clock, and there was already like 8 cars parked there, and like some of them were parked on either side of the sidewalk, so it was pretty obvious that pedestrian safety in particular, traffic is kind of something that we need to key in on and address and looking at improving this site location. yeah, one thing we've also heard and gathered is that this is an important site for winter sledding for the community, so we're trying to be very mindful of not impacting that important usage. It sounds like that's kind of a rite of passage for you all here when you get that winter snowed to be able to sled there. What else to know? So yeah, we're still just really trying to get as much information from you all, what you think is appropriate for this site in terms of improvements. What you think would be too heavy-handed, what you think is just appropriate based on how it's used. Go to the next slide.
Well, too.
Okay, so there we go. So let's just looking at the site a little closer. One thing that we're mindful of is that, and that we've heard from our last session, was that North Mesa Road with the roundabout improvement has picked up a little bit more in traffic volume. So we heard a lot of feedback about kind of safety around entering and exiting the site in relation to North Mesa Road. So I think a part of moving forward is looking into more like a traffic analysis of what might we do to mitigate some of those flows in terms of speed. And another thing we gathered is that when it's winter and people are sledding as they park across the street, and it gets very congested there with families who are then crossing the road in order to use the sledding hill. So this is something that is top of mind and moving forward. So the next slide. So recapping our first listening session, just things that we really took away from was that this trailhead is really like a crossroads for so many different trails that connect to it, that it has a high capacity, and then on top of that, you do have a lot of people that go there to park to access it. And so it seems like there's a little bit of a tension between how much use and volume it's getting with the footprint that's available to actually accommodate that use. And the winter sledding hill is really important. Parking capacity is not adequate. There's concerns about safety. One of the things we heard last session was a desire to look at other county-owned properties that might be able to better facilitate parking and access to Bayo Canyon Trailhead. In the RFP for our scope of work, there was a voiced desire to explore horse trailer parking, but based on our last community meeting, it seemed like that wasn't a very popular idea for a couple of reasons. One being the challenges with how much space you have to work with. Again, kind of like entering into the site from North Mesa and exiting onto North Mesa with a horse trailer might be a little sketchy. And really some of the only space that would be available for horse trailer parking would be pushing into the lower field zone, and that was definitely not a popular idea. So we're kind of still investigating what other sites might better provide horse trailer parking that isn't here at Bayo Canyon Trailhead. Another thing we heard was that folks don't really want to see it get overdeveloped. They would like the primitive feel of the Bayo Canyon Trailhead. So, you know, again, in our RFP and our scope of work, we were looking at like picnic shelters and picnic tables, potentially a vault toilet. And that's something that is kind of in conflict with that primitive feel. So moving forward, might be taking that off the table, but I think that will be a lot of this stuff is also going to be informed by the survey that we have online. which we've got over 100 responses now, so all that data will get collected and that will inform decision making moving forward with what gets included in any improvements. Yeah, so some goals, mitigating potential conflicts between the various user groups and especially with vehicle traffic. There was some discussion around a desire to maybe lean into that primitive natural feel of the site and maybe do like restoration plantings. Someone mentioned something about doing more to improve like the meadowscape and the flat area at the site. Protecting the sledding hill, and also folks noted just using fiscal responsibility to not over engineer the site to achieve certain goals like improved or expanding parking, for example. Next slide. Excuse me. So one of the ideas that was floated that it seemed like there was a good amount of support for was the idea of like closing the parking lot entirely to vehicle parking. And then in conjunction with that, looking at enforcing no parking or providing physical barriers to not being able to park on the shoulder across the street so that people aren't putting themselves in danger by parking there when it's really busy during like the sledding season and stuff. And along with that, one idea was floated was having a gate that was like, seasonal. So then it would be, I guess, up to the county to open it during the season, like for sledding and stuff like that. Yeah, and that was an idea that was floated. I think moving forward, it's like a really big design move that isn't really, it's not in the scope of work for what we're looking at. Actually, if we go to the next slide. Oh, I guess the slide I was thinking of is going to be coming up. But a part of our investigation is looking at the 2025 open space trails and master plan, which identified various parks and trails assets throughout the county. And Bayo Canyon was one of the top priorities that was noted in that master plan. But nowhere in that community engagement process or in that report was it voiced that like closing the trailhead was a proposed solution to that problem. So moving forward, I think we are taking note of what will be the next slides is we're looking at from the last community meeting, the community identified different locations that they were interested in potentially doing that improved parking or accommodating horse trailer parking. So one of the major areas of interest was the North Mesa Picnic Grounds. Folks argue that it's already relatively flat. It's already in process of a redesign. And so there was a desire to look at horse trailer parking in that zone. And he connected with Site Southwest, who's the other consultant working on this project. And I know they did a community session, listening session last week. For any of you there? Yeah, cool. One thing we learned just got more clarification on yesterday was that the water tower actually has a 200-foot radius, safety radius that needs to be observed where there can't be development. And so that's pretty much exactly the zone here that Site Southwest was investigating, looking at putting horse trailer parking. So whether or not horse trailer parking is going to be feasible at this location is up in the air. And then next slide.
Lex, it wants to go backwards to go forward. My apologies.
Skip one, there you go. So this was another location that, community kind of pinpointed as a potential for having like a horse trailer lot or overflow lot. It's, just up the road from the Bayo Canyon trailhead. And it's a relatively flat area. It's a short walking distance to the trailhead. It would require, like, for horses in particular, the dotted line would be kind of a necessary soft surface connector trail that would have to be developed to accommodate the horses, just so that they're not walking on the pavement. And that could be a limiting factor just because of the slopes there. For the slopes, there could be a limiting factor to developing that trail. Again, that would take further exploration. So that's another area that was identified in the next slide. Someone mentioned looking along Diamond Drive. It was, I don't think there was a specific location, but this seemed like a potential area along Diamond Drive that's not too far away that maybe could work. You kind of mirror the development of the fire station across the street. It seems kind of flat. It might require some earthwork and stuff like that, but nice thing about this is there is already like soft surface trail. There's already a sidewalk, but it does require people to travel through the tunnel, which with horses, which may not work for some people. It also could create conflict between, you know, bikers entering on one side and horses entering on another. Next slide. Someone also mentioned looking at this turnout that is up by the cemetery. This does have a soft surface trail all the way down. It is the furthest distance out of all the locations that were noted. There is a good amount of space up there. And then next slide. So, yeah, moving forward, just to reiterate, the alternative location discussion is, I think, really helpful in providing insight into like maybe what future developments might look like. But for the scope of what can we do to improve Bayo Canyon Trailhead, it's kind of out of the scope of our work. But we're going to continue to work with Site Southwest and other consultants to exchange the flow of information that we get from you all. And again, yeah, that information can be leveraged in the future by the community to enact new projects or change. Yeah, so right now we're not looking at closing the trailhead to vehicular access as an option. And instead, I think the focus is to see what we can do to improve the existing asset that is there and what amenities are there. Creating more delineation between the sidewalk and the parking, trying to make that a safer interface. And in the master plan, it also noted that improving signage was something that was important to exploring. And so other things that were listed in our scope of work was looking at potentially lighting around just like the parking area, dog waste and trash receptacles, potentially restoration plantings, stitching posts, again, horse trailer parking, and then picnic area and restroom. But those latter two items, it seems pretty clear right now that it's not a very popular idea. I think that's it. Next one. Yeah. So again, we have an online survey. This is the QR code. If you haven't taken it, please do so. It's a really important way for us to capture data and There's some pretty like, just more targeted questions. You guys can write free form what ideas you have. And yeah, it'll guide us moving forward. And I think with that, we can open up to discussion.
So
Tori.
just one clarification, and there was a slide that somehow got left out. So in the Trails and Open Space Management Plan that our community members adopted, the RB adopted, and council adopted, Bayo Canyon was the #1 trailhead to look at. To reiterate what he said, there was no conversations about closing it. There were conversations about looking for supplemental or additional parking to access that trailhead. So that is when the statement, no option was put there. So everything else is still on the table, but that is where that information came from. I just want to clarify that I didn't make that decision in a vacuum. It's actually what was in that document, 5 pages if you would like. So back to you.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, and that master plan process does have a project page similar to this one. So that document is totally available for folks to reference. But yeah, I think we can go up to comments and discussion. Interested to hear what y'all are thinking.
And just a reminder, make sure I get to you with the microphones so the folks on Zoom can hear the conversation.
Yeah, I just have two remarks. One thing is that the Staples have force access to Bayo Canyon, so I'm wondering, is it really necessary to have trailer parking further down toward town? That was my first question. The second one is just an opinion that that little basin that's down below the trailhead sign, which we call the flat area, that's been used before, county, with construction and stuff, and whatever. It's just finally starting to recover a little bit with some chamiso and other things. So, you know, that's what I would really like to see down in that canyon or that basin area.
Yeah, so to the first question, one thing we heard in the first listening session was that a part of the interest in creating more equestrian access into the Bayo Canyon was that during the winter, there's a certain portion of the trail that becomes inaccessible, becomes iced out. There might be someone here who might be able to speak better to that scenario. And then, yeah, thanks for the second note. Really noted.
So a couple things. One is there are a whole bunch of bobcats that live down in that basin. I went by there yesterday and somebody was telling me there are a bunch of them that live down there. So it is a wildlife habitat. I think as Corey said, needing more car parking. I don't know how much more we need right now. Today when I came here, there were 4 cars there. You know, I've certainly seen more, but finding some other place close by where they could park, I think is a good idea. In terms of the tunnels, horses go through that all the time and risk bicycles and whatever, and it seems to work out okay. I'm thinking that if horse trailers come to park one of those other alternative locations over on the west side, there are lots of other trails. You can actually get into Bayo Canyon if you go back behind the cemetery or up over the hill. So I'd say putting the parking on the west side, the tunnel is not really an issue for horses. And in answer to this gentleman's question, the problem is that the trails to get down from the stable are completely iced. It's on a south facing, north facing, whatever side, north facing wall.
Yeah.
And so it's impassable in the winter. And so that's kind of where the issue comes up. But, I think sledding is really important. I don't know where you're gonna put parking for sledding. That's probably the busiest time when we have all the sledders there, when you've got cars all over the road. Again, I think normal times you need a little more parking. I wouldn't say we don't need 20 more spaces. They're usually 4 to 6 cars, maybe a few more for most days.
Thank you.
We also have some people online.
Yeah, I'd echo that, I'd add on one thing is we're actually open space working group and a question, we actually got together and made a recommendation for a trail from the stables for the winter going to Bayo Canyon Trailhead, and that would be a much better use of resources, is to be able to actually implement that recommendation. And it would be, to me, the place to park trailers on that side. I'm not opposed to the other on the west too. That is at the states. People can park their trailers, and it's part of the ride to come down the proposed trail that connects up to the winter.
So, that I agree with you, the one, well, there's not really a good one, but it's at the stables right now for it, other than all the way to the running grounds, but. One of the problems is getting from the stables there, I have very traffic safe horses, I have a horse with a cart, so we go on the road. You don't want, in general, you don't want the public with their horses on the road, and there is a problem getting from the stables into the picnic area.
And that would proposed trail.
Right,
Is in that fall.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not saying I haven't voted for it.
Yes, we did propose a couple of options, Louis and Kevin of the open space group and the equestrian working group. It was presented to the Parks and Rec board, so I guess we could get that information to you, or Jerry, maybe you could pass it along.
That'd be great.
But that was done months ago.
Yeah, this really helpful context for us, like. It helps us get a better picture of everything that's going on, and yeah. Like we can't, from where we're sitting at Bayo Canyon, looking at what we can improve, we can't necessarily push that forward, but it's really helpful to hear those solutions so that we can, communicate it with other consultants and stuff like that. Yeah.
Vanessa, did you wanna make comment?
Yeah, like I like the fact that you guys are trying to, manage that area, but I definitely have concerns of some of the areas that you're wanting to take for the horse trailer parking, because then it one disturbs the wildlife that's already in that area, and it starts to push it towards people that are living in the area, and then two, it kind of takes away from what I love about Los Alamos is like there's a lot of primitive areas for you to go hiking at instead of this built up of concrete and like large areas like that, or like light pollution, which kind of removes the feel of as I've known Los Alamos to be. And then I do like the fact that like if you were to put up like those doggy stations, so that hopefully that decreases the amount of dog poop you might accidentally walk on or in going on the trails. But yeah. But I just don't see the need of like maybe more parking for it, because it seems for the most part to be good unless it comes around sledding season, and then that's kind of where it starts to get more chaotic, I guess, when there's just multiple people wanting to go sledding.
May I ask how you access the trailhead? Do you drive there, bike there?
It depends. Majority of the time, I'll walk there as part of my just part of my hike, and then sometimes I'll park there, and that's more of I'm trying to take someone that just physically can't take that long of a hike, but they still want to enjoy those views of those trailheads. The trailhead there.
Okay, thank you. Have you taken the survey?
No, I'm going to. I saw the link, so I'm gonna or the code, so I'm gonna scan it and then take the survey.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm of the camp that's more of a minimalist and avoiding doing harm in terms of transit through the area. And I am very interested in seeing options that bring a trail for foot traffic down that doesn't come on the sidewalk. It's foot traffic, bicycle traffic, horse traffic that stays off that sidewalk and the road. So one of the things that you mentioned was a 200-foot perimeter limit around the water tower. And the specific question is, what is restricted? Is it only for permanent things like parking? Or is it also restricted for transitory things like a trail where people are not really permanently there, they're just passing by? Because I don't think the fence extends. I don't think there's a fence preventing, 200-foot access. So I'd like to hear more about that detail of what that constraint really means.
We asked that very same question after they told us the perimeter. One of the conversations they shared with us is when that typically, if you'll look like at Baraka Mesa, they have a compound around the water tank. And there was a lot of community concern about doing that up there. So that's why there's not a fence around it. But we did ask that question. We're waiting on clarification for them. What does that mean? Does that mean absolutely no permanent structures? Is transitory okay? It's a good question, and thank you for asking it.
Hi, I'm a member of the Parks and Recs Board, and since this first came up, I've been talking to a lot of people around town about this particular situation. I don't see any of them here. I've tried to encourage them to come and participate. I hope some of them at least did the survey. One thing I heard in general, and this is not 100%, was most people don't really like the idea of taking a road all the way down into the flat area and then developing a large parking lot there with other amenities. But most of those same people said that they saw the possibility of developing that informal parking that's just off the road into a better parking space. You'd probably have to put some retaining walls, bring in some filter, but using that as a better developed and safer parking space and maybe a little better access onto and out of North Road into there. Everybody that I talked, most of the people I talked to seemed to think that that was certainly a good idea, considering that it's used for parking anyway. So improving the parking of where it already exists, but most of them were not in favor of taking a road down there. And that's, I will keep telling people to fill out the survey and get after it and put public input in. But that's just what I've heard from the people I've talked to. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to get some of the online. What are you doing about the fire danger in Bayo Canyon? How would you evacuate the people in the canyon on the Mesa Tops down to Main Hill Road and the rest of the town?
That has been a conversation with our fire department's wildland fire team. Public Works works with the Pueblo annually to improve that road. Those of you that were around here in 2020, remember that was one of the exit roads to get out of town when the last big fire came through town. We're aware of that. There's also a huge conversation with our wildland fire division and Eric Peterson, our Trails and Open Space Management, on identifying, and again, in the Trails and Open Space Management Plan, that was part of the conversation, identifying our high target areas for fire outbreak and fire mitigation, and they're actively working on that. to use some additional funds to continue. They've been working on that for a number of years. You may have seen the demonstration area between 502 and the Canyon Rum Trail last fall. So they're continuing to look at that, and just as a side note, hopefully no one in here has felt it. But the insurance companies are being very discriminatory about canceling fire insurance, and the county is very sensitive about keeping that in mind as we take care of our own property.
Why don't you put the ADA horse mounting stations, hitches, et cetera, with the arena improvements, with the ADA bathrooms? Much more places to ride, more room for horses, trailers, trucks, and safer. Too tight to get in and out of the trailhead, especially turning out into traffic up the hill or into the parking lot. I think that was part of a comment. And then there was one last one. What are your plans to replace the stairs up to Veranda Mesa? There is no ADA walkway to get to the trailhead or to the roundabout. Is that happening?
Accessibility is part of this conversation that we're having, getting down to at least those amenities. It won't be a fully accessible trail because this will follow, and there's a public right of way accessibility guidelines or PROAG, so there's a little bit less restriction on accessibility there.
What we got?
Couple things just to touch on what Jerry was talking about. If a road does go down there, and I was said this at the last meeting, but just again for the record, if a road were to go down to that meadow, it's gonna be really, really steep. So, and then the other thing, just to compliment the county and Corey, they have really worked hard for clearing that area behind the stables and all the way down into the canyon. Done tremendous fire mitigation work there.
Yeah, I really appreciate that there's been a big change from what we saw in the first session. One thing that was shown was an idea of a possible, like a horse trailer turnaround up in an undeveloped area between the picnic grounds and the trailhead. And that, I don't recollect, I don't know that certainly wasn't something that was positively received at the meeting I was at, so I don't know how that came into play. But I think that would be very ideal. I think that area is actually a beautiful little area. I've been out there again since, and to me, part of the goal over the big picture is to provide more accessible trails, or trails that are kind of easier and able to be, but still be in the forest. That would be a prime area to create a loop that connected right to the trail system there. That would be a beautiful trip out to the canyon rim, Bayo Canyon rim there in the forest. So I'd love to, I don't know about all your scope and all of that, but to me, I think these things need to be looked at bigger picture and not driven by the scope of a contractor or something like that. So I think the other thing I know, it looked to me by that diagram shown about the radius around the water tower, that you have to close the road if it's about not having, because it's that circle that was shown covers up the road. So so if you can't have a trail, I don't know how you can have a high traffic road there. So that seems a little bit odd, but right next to it is the picnic grounds. And I don't mind the idea at all of improving the parking that's there But if you need overflow, there's a place that's not far away that people can be directed saying, hey, if these spots are full, there's where you can go, and they're pretty close by, have a restroom, have a picnic table, and there's an existing connector. I think in terms of the concrete, there's a real opportunity to do a nice trail. There's nothing wrong, I wouldn't say tear out the concrete, but you could have a very nice natural trail. It definitely would take some work on some switchbacks or something as you got closer down toward the trailhead to kind of bridge a fairly short section. But that would be certainly way less expensive than building a road down into that meadow.
And somebody online who doesn't make comment.
I listened to the first meeting this afternoon, so I didn't attend, but I'd like to compliment you on incorporating a lot of those points and, the repeated points. So many of us talk about how important it is that it's primitive and natural and stays so much of what we've always loved. And you definitely are thinking about and listening to what we're saying, and I appreciate that. I think, I would also like to just reiterate what a great community we have and how we are, do so well. I think come a long ways in, being shared trail users, not just the hikers, not just the bikers, not just the horseback riders, not just the sledders, everybody is trying to work together to keep this place that we love so much the same. I would just say again, if we're kind of tallying up, I'm definitely in the same camp of not doing a lot of development in there, not pouring concrete in there. Just make it as simple as we can to possibly get a little parking. There are some dead trees to the left side, west side as you drive in that possibly could be taken out to sort of widen it without taking it down into the area that we're all referring to. So you might look at that. But yeah, let's keep it the special place it's always been. Thanks.
Anne, did you have something to say?
Yes, I want to say, first of all, hopefully you can hear me. First of all, thank you for doing the listening sessions. Second of all, there's things that have to be considered as in a big picture, not just this one little area. But if you look at the one little area, you have to be very careful about doing construction in that area, because some time ago, that area was off limits to people. It was all fenced off. It was unexploded ordinances. Nobody was allowed in there. It's supposedly cleaned, but I don't think it was, quote, cleaned enough that there was supposed to be heavy duty construction being done down there. And I would hate to have something uncovered. I don't know that there would be. I have no idea. I wasn't, involved in any of that. But I do know we had that problem on DP Road where it was cleaned, but we ran into stuff. Second of all, you should make sure that every area that can get to that trailhead is ADA compliant. That's, to me, almost more important than additional parking, because if you made every area that could get there, you wouldn't need very, very much parking. You could basically do with what you have now. And I know that's not what the consultant wants to hear. The consultant has a job to do, but those stairs coming down from Barranca Mesa are treacherous. When I go down them, I have to be extremely careful. They're falling apart, and there's no way for a bike or somebody in a wheelchair or somebody with a walker or even maybe somebody who's less steady on their feet to be able to get from the trailhead up the hill or down to the roundabout. And I heard that there was a person on a bike that was just hit in the roundabout. So if you could actually include the roundabout as part of your overall scope of looking at things, maybe not for this particular project, but overall, you need to make that whole area safer. And so for pedestrians, for bicyclists, for everybody, and if you could expand all that and make it safer, then you wouldn't, as I said, need as much parking. And also, we don't want to expand this whole area and make it a developed thing and pull in more people into a unburned canyon where our fire danger is extremely high right now. And yes, on Bronca Mesa, people have lost their insurance, and getting new insurance, it's costing them like $5,000 in order to be able to get insurance. And now that we're a WUI community, I think the insurance agents are looking at this even more. So if we have people who are on edge of canyons and we have more activity down there, will that cause insurance rates to go up even more or become, even less able to get? Because if somebody struck a match down there, things could go up. And I've talked to lots of people who are scared about that. Behind their houses, somebody dropping a match, not even intentionally. Or, say the horse trailers, if you had a spark from a chain, you could have that whole canyon go up. If that whole canyon goes up, you could be looking at trying to get people off the two mesas. And if the fire went down towards the main hill road, that would block your ability to get out the main hill road. So I think you can't look at this as an isolated thing. You have to look at it as an overall project. And you have to look at all the things that are, that you're looking at. The other thing is wildlife down there. Are you going to, if more people, are you going to push the wildlife up to the top of the mesas? People are already having problems. Animals are already getting shot by Fish and Game because people are complaining. And then also, does everybody going into the canyon know about how to interact with wildlife? I mean, and then steep drop offs. If you're encouraging people from out of town to come in and use our trails, do they understand about the cliffs and where there's drop offs on those trails? I mean, so you have to look at the whole picture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is James Warnicki. I'll just give my 2 cents. Like other people said, I support, making if the area is going to get developed, definitely like focusing on accessibility and trying to minimize impact on the natural spaces. My friends and I, we use it a lot for biking and hiking, and I have a lot of friends that use it for their horses. And as far as I know, everybody kind of likes it as it is. So I don't know if it needs like major remodeling or anything. But definitely if we do go that way, if you're going to be doing a lot of construction anyway, I really hope that we can have more accessible spaces in town. And like other people had said, just try to minimize the concrete and ugliness of development, and that great natural space as it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa's made a comment that made me think of something that we've talked about, both in the Parks and Recs and working groups, but also with just people I know around town. The idea that at all of these different trailheads, one of the things that would be nice to see to improve them, and it wouldn't cost a lot of money, would be to put up a lot more educational material about interacting with wildlife, trail etiquette, how to protect and restore natural spaces, how to protect and take care of the trails. And it would be good to have it pretty much any of the trailheads, but this one gets so much activity. That would be a very good place to have a big informational kiosk area that had information along those sorts of lines. So that's something you might get. Thanks.
Are there any mountain bike users here? Is there any comment from that kind of perspective that you'd like to?
The
Share?
mountain bikers on Tuesday afternoons, they go out for their like big club ride. So uh, I'm probably the only one that's like really representing that group right now. But they are aware of the meeting and they filled out the survey. Um, and like I kind of said in my public comment, we do bike down there quite a bit. We appreciate the bike station. Um, but as I said, you know, we're pretty happy with how it is now. So whatever changes do happen, hopefully they don't change it too much.
Noted.
We've heard a lot about parking and keeping it appropriate. What is your vision of appropriate? 5 spaces, 10 spaces, 15, I don't think there's any room for any more than 20. What would be a fill? If you think it's less than 5, and then get a hand raised. 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. More than 10?
One online too.
Okay, so somewhere around 10-ish sounds like a good number, which I think would actually be more than kind of fits in there right now. Okay, thank you. That's been one of the questions that I've had back here listening to your comments, so thank you.
Okay, well, with that, I think we're ready to call it an evening. We encourage you to keep an eye on the website for, meeting notes, from our session tonight. And, as we go through your comments with the county, we'll keep you posted, as well as with the survey. So everybody can see, kind of the direction from the community and some of the needs from the county, like the ADA access and safety. Till the 30th?
I've got one more question. Those of you that use it as a pass-through on your longer excursions, is there something you would like to see there that if you've been out on the trail 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, that you would like to see there?
I'd like to see better connectivity to Walnut Canyon Trail System, because I'll use it that way a lot, and it's okay now, but you kind of have to jaywalk across North Mesa Road there, and then you come down the sidewalk and cross the, by the roundabout, and then kind of come around. It's a little clunky, but and I know that you don't even show Walnut Canyon Trail System on there, but that's a great connector in my view. And that's the strength of this whole trailhead, is it's a great connector place. So many trails and routes can cross there.
But just don't take the really cool single track that comes down right before the roundabout for the mountain bikers.
Cool, great information. I was thinking, we know we got a bike station there. Does anybody need to refill their water bottles? Would it be cool to have a water refilling station? Or you have people that sometimes that's a really cool place to use the restroom instead of hiding behind a tree down the way, or anything like that? Okay.
I personally, sorry, the bathroom by the golf course is pretty close. I don't know if it's necessary.
Okay, good point. Thank you.
And water would be bad if you could do it without water. You know, sure, like I've done big missions where I go on down and drop down to the floor of the canyon and come up the zip line, or back up the other to make a loop out of it. Tin Rock Trail. And yeah, water might be nice, but I wouldn't opt for water at the cost of a whole lot of cement development, you know what I'm saying? Having,
Usually water lines are pretty easy if they're accessible by, is something else to think about.
So are the stairs going up to Barranca, is that kind of in the scope of this?
Actually, we had focused this just to the trailhead, but that's something we can put on our radar to look at. Do you remember seeing anything about that, Eric? I don't remember seeing that in the master plan either. We'll make a note and look at it. Thank you for letting us know about that access concern coming down Barranca Mesa.
I think I did see a little note of mention of it just briefly in the master plan and, I think if I'm remembering right, it is included in the kind of polygon we drew for getting a site survey, so that'll
Okay,
be helpful, yeah.
all right, we got the survey there. You can keep up with the project on the county community services webpage, Bayo Canyon Trailhead. We'll close this on March 30th. I'll probably be back. Probably with the school stuff, probably sometime in June to kind of talk about a little refined visions of what we've talked about here. And have some fun then. Is there anything else online, Linda, that anybody wants to?
Just signs for education, signs to educate people of fire and wildlife encounters, at the trailheads. And then there was comments which you answered about the ADA access for Bronca steps, and nothing with smells to pull in predators.
Okay. All right, we really appreciate you taking your time this evening and thank you for being part of this.
Thank you, everybody.